in the snow and the sleet or whatever it's going to be by that point.
So I'm the parent now. I was saying, you're going to learn today. No. And I already picked her. Made another list on 2 things that she
that's what I told my husband. I was like, we're going to be out of milk before this, because he always goes on Saturday mornings. And I was like, we're going to be out of milk by Saturday morning. He was like, I was like, I'm just saying. He's like, you could get that. And I'm like, and I'd have to drag 2 kids into the store with me. No, not happening. For some reason, it is not letting me admit Ariel. What is going on? I keep hitting admit and it says joining and then it doesn't work.
Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there should be a discussion question on Google Classroom that you can start with while I'm getting attendance, and then we will kind of talk about that and look at the responses and go from there. I forgot we were on silence.
Also, the senior class picture, 12-year classmates and senior composites will be taken at that time. Seniors who have reduced schedules should be on campus by 8 a.m. Students in 8th through 11th grades who are virtual should be on campus by 8:30 that morning to be included in club pictures. Travel Club is selling Domino's pizza slice and the price card for $10. Buy your card online by scanning the QR codes posted outside Mr. and Mrs. Kelly's classroom, or find a Travel Club member. Each card is good until the end of 2021. Use the card as often as you like to get a buy one, get one deal on large pizzas. It is a great deal for Super Bowl and birthday parties, or just to feed a large family. Make 2021 better than 2020 by getting yourself lots of free pizza. It works for delivery during quarantine too. There's a sign-up sheet in the office for 7th and 8th grade baseball. Any students who are interested in playing should sign up as soon as possible. For lunch today, there will be a choice of spaghetti and meatballs or roasted chicken. In the cafe, there will be a chicken wrap. Everyone have a great day.
What does that mean by natural role?
Like, what role does nature play? Like, throughout the whole time, like, has nature been an escape? Has it been a way to actually get to do something? Has it caused you, to be more inside? Like, what kinds of things has nature, like, could you do in nature during this time that people might have done that they might not have before? Also, while you are working on that discussion question, for those of you that are in here, I'm going to hand you this form. For those of you that are not, I will have to figure out a way to get it to you digitally, and then you can bring it back, or I don't know, maybe send it back digitally. I don't really know how that works. But on the 23rd of February, you will be taking the ACT here at school as your state test. It is free, so this is not one that you have to pay for. It's not part of the national program, so you don't have to pre-register and all that kind of stuff. But in order for your scores from this one to be sent to colleges, you apparently have to have a waiver signed saying we can release those scores. So if you want those scores, you won't take it, so you're good. So if you want those scores to go to colleges, then you definitely will need to sign this so that we can release those scores. And I'm not sure if I told y'all this, but I don't think so because it was just Tuesday that you were in here. Some of you may have an email from me because you need to take your STAR test, or there were a couple that you might want to consider retaking your STAR test if you got an email and you did take it, because you might have dropped a little bit. So, and I don't want it to drop enough that it flags it and they're like, oh, you have to be an RTI, when really it was like it was a bad test, or just something happened or something like that. So check your email to make sure that you do not need to take your STAR. If you haven't taken it, you need to take it. That's what the email is telling you. But it should, I think, yes. Yeah, because yours, well, I had your name down, but I want to. Oh, okay, you haven't taken it yet? Oh, okay. I was going to say, that's why I was like, normally it shows up, but I didn't see it.
No, I was sick.
Just to make sure, when it says name and student name, you still put your name, right?
I think name is actually the parent name. I don't really know, but it says student name, but then it's down here, it's the parent signature. So I don't know if the parent has to put their name on the top line or what.
Okay, I'm just curious mine.
So I would probably put the parent name, because if it says student name below, then that probably means that the top one's not the student name. Either that or they just really screwed up. Which, who knows? All right, about half of you have finished your response. So if you are one of the other 11 that have not, then please get that.
Okay, so if I press this, will people actually see my?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay.
I use the word intuned. Can you get any more of that?
Intuned?
Yeah, I'm intuned.
That's okay. Okay.
Also, I don't care what you'll see. Shut up. I'm saying you.
All right, so nature is the same, but it's easier to enjoy by staying home a lot more. So you have more time to enjoy it. Nature was like an escape. Go mudding, find the ranger, swim. All right, so you've spent more time in nature over the last few months. Nature has allowed us to be outside together. Yeah, so sometimes when you can't actually be with somebody, you could kind of be outside with them, at least from a distance. And going to parks, going on trails. I think I skipped hardly anyone outside a lot of times. So it is a lot easier to social distance because you have more space to sort of spread out and go and do what you like to do. Nature's played a big role. You can get out and do things, but still maintain the 6 feet distance. Workouts and ran. Yeah, I didn't do that, but I walked some, and especially in March, like that was my escape out of the house. Like my husband would get home from work and I'm like, bye. And he was like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm just walking around the neighborhood. I'll be home later. Going to the river, riding the 4-wheeler. You can go outside when normally you'd be confined. Skating. More area. You don't have to worry as much. I don't like to go outside. You just look at how pretty it is. Well, I mean, then that works too. You can still enjoy nature even if you're not out in it. So you can just look at it from the inside. Clear your thoughts. Stay away from others. Beautiful nature of the world. Use nature as a getaway, hiking all over the place toward waterfalls. And I want to go see some of those waterfalls. Like I have never actually, I want to do, is there like a tour like that you go to all this?
No,
Oh, okay.
And that's what we went to, and we went to big waterfalls there, you can actually get down.
Oh, that's cool. I need to do that. Get more in tune with nature. Okay, not too bad. Gotten a tan at one point. There you go. And you can social distance. All right. So since you can't go out and see your friends, you could just go outside. I mean, and that's one of the big things that we noticed in our family is in the summer, especially, like most of the time we'll like get in the car and we'll drive to town and go eat lunch or, something, but it's like, we're not really outside. And like this summer, like we ate lunch outside, we played, we just didn't leave the house. And so we stayed, I mean, we went to the lake and all that, but it was different because even though we were going and doing before, we weren't really outside as much. And keeping away from other people. Nature's played a big role, allowing people to express their behavior and thoughts. Okay, so again, if you have not yet had a chance to submit your answer, then make sure you go in and do that. So the reason that I ask you that is because we're about to move to the next phase of American literature, which has to do with an appreciation of nature, kind of switch and a shift from kind of the group mentality, like you have to watch out for everyone and take care of each other and all that, to more of a take care of yourself and know yourself and get in tune with nature and all that kind of stuff. And so we're about to kind of get into all that. And it's interesting because as I was looking up some things about Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and their experiences with nature and how they approached it, I also started to find articles and things about how they were connected. Those ideas are connected to right now. So I thought it would be kind of relevant and a little more, maybe make this stuff a little more interesting for, whoops, that's not the right due date. I don't even know what the right due date is. We're just going to say that because I don't know. Come on. All right, so we'll start with Emerson. So we'll do a little bit of background. We'll read his work, which is actually just called, or we'll read a portion of his work, which is actually just called Nature. And then we will look at Thoreau and read a short passage from Walden. And then you will have some things to work with Walden. And then the next time you will have some of those articles that kind of show the connection, and then eventually you are actually going to be writing a brief argumentative essay where you're pulling in information and things like that from some sources and things. So it's like a mini research paper to kind of get you in the mindset for argument, because eventually, very soon, you're going to write a full research paper and all that. So we're just kind of leading into a lot of different things here. I know you're super excited, right? Okay. So Emerson is kind of what starts the period of American Romanticism. And the first part of the American Romanticism is actually more of a focus on this idea of transcendentalism, which we'll talk about in a second. But he had some big ideas. Sometimes they weren't necessarily accepted by all people. And I mean, a lot of, you see a lot of his struggles, a lot of the things that he kind of spoke out about were things that he struggled with as well. His father was a minister up until he passed away when Emerson was only 8. His mother, because she couldn't afford to to feed them and all that, she had to open their home as like a boarding house, so she had to let other people come and like live with them and all that. So I can imagine that would be a big shift, a big change. He went to Harvard College at 14, and this was not super uncommon, because remember, they really only had like formal education through like what we would consider 8th grade and things like that. So the fact that they're going to college at this young age doesn't mean that they're necessarily geniuses. It just meant that college started younger at that time. And then he went on to Harvard Divinity School after that, and he actually became a minister himself and preached in Boston's second church. I don't know if it was the second one to be established in Boston, or that was just the name of the church, like, first, whatever, second, whatever. He married a woman named Ellen Tucker, but in 1831, she died very suddenly, and it really threw him completely. He had already started questioning. I mean, it's kind of strange, but you have a minister who is questioning his own religious beliefs. But after her death, it really made him question, and it really starts to kind of take his faith away. And so he didn't feel like he could continue as a minister if he was not strong in his faith anymore. And so he left the church to start writing. And the first thing that he did start writing was Nature. And what he would do is he talked about all these different aspects of nature. He would just observe and write about the trees. He would write about the grass. He would write about the stars. The one that we have, a lot of it is the stars in the forest and things like that. And it became a very influential work. He eventually did remarry, and he had 4 children. And he started to become popular for some of his speeches that he would give, except when he gave those at Harvard, which was still a very religious-based school. And of course, they rejected organized religion. Like, he wasn't against religion. Like, he didn't completely lose his faith, but he was against the idea of organized religion. He felt more strongly that, it was more your personal relationship, and it wasn't as much about being with the whole group. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so after he spoke there and they realized that, then they asked him not to come back for 30 years. So apparently he was kind of banned from speaking at Harvard. And so the Transcendentalist movement, which is what kind of sparked right there at the beginning of the American Romanticism, was based on the ideas of optimism. And so that's like thinking positively about certain things, glass half full, the best things that could happen, not the worst. Self-reliance, so not worrying about someone else taking care of you or you taking care of someone else, like everyone relying on themselves, like you be able to do what you need to do. Intuition, which is just that, like what you sense, what you feel. And idealism, which is that basically your reality is created in your mind. Like you create your own reality. What is real because you say it's real in your head, kind of thing, which is a, stretch for a lot of people because they're like, no, reality is real. It's not what you think, but so lots of philosophical kind of craziness. His optimism was challenged. His son, Waldo, died of scarlet fever. And so he used that to write. And he also, because of this, he started to take solace in the arts and started to study more because he felt like that could alleviate his grief. He said that the arts and the intellect can ravish us into a region wherein these passionate clouds of sorrow cannot rise. So he like drove himself into like music and art and things like that, and in his studies, so he could try to escape his grief. And then his memory started to fail. His eyes, he couldn't see as well, and so he had to stop writing basically. And then he died of pneumonia at the age of 79. But he was a great influence to a lot of famous authors. First, Henry David Thoreau, who we actually will look at in just a second. And Thoreau lived with Emerson for a short time. Like he was a handyman for Emerson's family. And he'd like fix stuff around the house. And then when he writes his famous Walden or Into the Woods, when he like leaves and goes for 2 years and like lives in a cottage by the lake, by the pond, by Walden Pond, that's actually on Emerson's property. He built a cottage on Emerson's property. I guess he was okay with that, to live in and to observe and write and all that kind of stuff. But other poets and novelists, Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, Robert Frost, lots of poetry there, Wallace Stevens, Hart Crane. So lots of different people that he has influenced throughout his writings and speeches and things like that. So a couple of major things that this portion of the piece focus on is like think about how you interact with nature in your daily life. And that's part of why I put that discussion question up there, because I wanted you to think about how do you interact with nature? Do you get outside and do certain things? Do you just stare at the sunset? Do you look at the stars? Like those kinds of things. And then also, how does your mood affect the way you see the world? Because a lot of times we see things differently based on how we actually feel. And he addresses that as well within this. Okay, so here is the first one from Nature, and it's just a couple of pages, so it's not super long. To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between him and what he touches. One might think that the atmosphere was made transparent with this design, to give man and the heavenly bodies the perpetual presence of the sublime. Seen in the streets of cities, how great they are. If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God which had been shown? But every night come out of these envoys of beauty and light, the universe with their admonishing smile. So starting off with, if you really want to be in solitude, you have to not only be by yourself, like get away from people, you also sometimes have to get away from your house, because even though nobody else may be there, it's like there's still sort of this, you're not entirely alone, and you still are filled with different thoughts. Like I know when I work from home or something like that, I still have in my head the laundry that needs to be finished, the dishes, like, so he's saying in order to be truly alone, you have to get out of the house. And in this case, he says, let him look at the stars. And, just kind of take it in, look at the wonder and amazement. How is this even possible that we can even see the stars that are so distant? And he says that if they weren't always there, like it would be a huge ordeal. Kind of like anybody go out and see the Christmas star, or really it was two planets aligned, but that was what you forgot. Oh man. But it was cool. It was a big deal. It was something that doesn't happen. It hasn't happened around Christmas in like 800 years or something like that. And so it was a big event. And so everybody was out looking at the stars and taking pictures. I mean, my dad, who does not he doesn't even think about stuff like that most of the time, he's sending me pictures and I'm like, wow, okay. And so if that was a big event, like if the stars didn't come out every night, then he's saying you would probably appreciate them more, and it would be like a big event that you would just be like in awe. But they do. And he was like, why isn't it a big event every single night? Like it could be. Like you can still be in amazement and awe every night because they're there, like all the time, kind of thing. The stars awaken a certain reverence because though always present, they are inaccessible. But all natural objects make a kindred impression when the mind is open to their influence. Nature never wears a mean appearance. Neither does the wisest man extort her secret and lose his curiosity by finding out all her perfection. Nature never became a toy to a wise spirit. The flowers, the animals, the mountains reflected the wisdom of his best hour as much as they delighted the simplicity of his childhood. And so just talking about if your mind is open, then nature can make an impression on you. But if you're not open to appreciating that beauty and just awe of what nature offers, then you may not actually see it. And he's like, and it's not like you can ever stop being curious. Like it's not like you know everything about nature just because you have observed it a lot. Like there's still way more to know always. Okay. And then when we speak of nature in this manner, we have a distinct but most poetical sense in the mind. We mean the integrity of impression made by manifold natural objects. It is this which distinguishes the stick of timber of the woodcutter from the tree of the poet. The charming landscape, which I saw this morning, is indubitably made up of some 20 or 30 farms. Miller owns this field, Locke that, and Manning the woodland beyond, but none of them owns the landscape. There is a property in the horizon which no man has, but he whose eye can integrate all the parts, that is the poet. This is the best part of these men's farms, yet to this their warranty deeds give no title. So he talks about how seeing nature differently, like how when you think about things in a different way, you're going to see things differently. So like the woodcutter and the poet, they're going to see the tree totally different. So how is the woodcutter going to see the tree? I mean, it's something for him to what? Chop down, make into fire sticks, basically, is what the stick of timber, like that's what he sees it as his job. It's essential, that sort of thing. But the poet is going to see the tree in a much different way. They're going to see the tree. They may picture, children swinging or climbing the tree. They may picture the tree swaying gently in the breeze and home to all, you know, all these birds and all this kind of stuff. So how you perceive nature has to do with what's inside you as well. And he'll kind of expand on that later. And then he talks about the landscape and how all these people own the land, but none of them own the landscape. And so I kind of like that sort of contrast. You can own land, but he said what's the best part of their farms, what I can see when I look out across, none of them actually own that exact thing. They don't own what I see when I look across at the landscape. It's, you know, that horizon, like nobody technically owns that except the person who is witnessing that and appreciating it. To speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of the man, but shines into the eye and the heart of the child. The lover of nature is he whose inward and outward senses are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of manhood. His intercourse with heaven and earth becomes part of his daily food. In the presence of nature, a wild delight runs through the man in spite of real sorrows. Nature says, he is my creature, and maugre in all his impertinent griefs. He shall be glad with me. Not the sun or the summer alone, but every hour and season yields its tribute of delight. For every hour and change corresponds to and authorizes a different state of the mind, from breathless noon to grimmest midnight. Nature is a setting that fits equally well a comic or a mourning piece. In good health, the air is a cordial of incredible virtue. Crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight under a clouded sky without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years as the snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God. The name of the nearest friend sounds then foreign and accidental. To be brothers, to be acquaintances, master or servant, is then a trifle and a disturbance. I am the lover of uncontained and immortal beauty. In the wilderness, I find something more dear and connate than in the streets or villages. In the tranquil landscape, and especially in the distant line of the horizon, man beholds somewhat as beautiful as his own nature. So he starts off talking about that as you get older, you don't see nature the same way. And I see that because as we get older, we get a little bit jaded or preoccupied with what's going on around us, but we don't see the little things, or sometimes we take the beauty of nature for granted. And you know, and I especially have noticed, like, I love sunsets, but honestly, I don't feel like I really appreciate them as much as when I was younger. Like when I was a kid, like I would just sit on our porch at the lake and I would just stare at that sunset for hours and hours. Now it's, you know, I still appreciate it, but I'll go out and then I'll just be like, oh, that's pretty. And then I'll go back in. Maybe I'll take a picture of it, maybe not. But I see that in my own children, like even Eason, who doesn't really speak that much, he just sits and stares. And for him to actually sit still and stare at something, like, that's impressive, that he just sits and just stares, and he'll say pretty, you know, like, you know, all of that. And then Ellis will be like, Mommy, look at all those colors. You have so many colors up, you know, and we don't think about the individual colors of the sunset. You know, like I see the sunset collectively most of the time. Like I don't think about how all the different shades and how it mixes. Driving home, we drive the same way every day, and I don't even notice some things. You know, Eason's back there going, cow, moo, you know, and Ellis is like, Mommy, that's a different cow than was there yesterday. Yesterday it was the white cow and it had a brown spot like right here on its shoulder of the leg, and this one is, we don't see that. Well, partly I'm driving, so I probably should look at the road, but I don't know that I would recognize that it was a different cow from one day to the next, but he does because he's a child. So I kind of see how that sometimes what we appreciated as children, we've kind of, you know, gone away from as we get older and more stuff goes on in our lives. And then he goes into the forest, in the woods. And he says, in the woods is, you know, perpetual youth, and you cast off your years just like a snake, and uses that simile, like a snake, as the snake his slough, like just like the snake sheds his skin. Oh, as we become young again, basically. And I can see that with my dad. Like my dad can't sit still to watch a TV show for 30 minutes, but he can sit in a deer stand all day long. No problem. He can't, you know, walk from the back door to the burning barrel or whatever he's got out there. He takes his Ranger because, you know, it's like 100 yards. So let's take the Ranger 100 yards because his knees hurt too much. But he can get down off of the deer stand and walk a mile to track a deer, but there's no way he could walk a mile just out here in the yard. And so it's a different mindset. And like he's saying, you throw off all of the extra, you know, nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, like nothing bad can happen that this right here can't fix. And my youth, whatever, it's not the woods necessarily. Mine's more like sitting on the porch or the pontoon at the lake and just like knowing I don't have anything else that I have to do right then. But it's the same sort of concept that nature, sometimes it can like heal us and kind of take us back to that youth. And it's like you're still a kid again. And he's saying in the woods, but wherever your woods technically are. The greatest delight which the fields and woods minister is the suggestion of an occult relation between man and the vegetable. I am not alone and unacknowledged. They nod to me and I to them. The waving of the boughs in the storm is new to me and old. It takes me by surprise and yet is not unknown. Its effect is like that of a higher thought or better emotion coming over me when I deemed I was thinking justly or doing right. So, you know, basically like, you know, we're one, like with the trees, and it's new, but it's not, it's, you know, that same sort of thing. Like it surprises me, but it's at the same time, I expect it. Like the paradox of nature and what it is in general. Yet it is certain that the power to produce this delight does not reside in nature, but in man, or in a harmony of both. It is necessary to use these pleasures with great temperance, for nature is not always tricked in holiday attire, but the same scene which yesterday breathed perfume and glittered as for the frolic of nymphs is overspread with melancholy today. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. To a man laboring under calamity, the heat of his own fire hath sadness in it. Then there is a kind of contempt in the landscape felt by him who has just lost by death a dear friend. The sky is less grand as it shuts down over less worth in the population. And so he ends, well, this is not actually the end of his part, but the end of ours ends with him saying, it's not really nature though that gives us these feelings. It's what's inside us and how we perceive the outside world. Because some days it may be beautiful and awe-inspiring, and it might lift your moods. I mean, most of the time when I go out in the sunshine, it's like, yes, it warms my skin. It makes me happy. It's, you know, it's not dreary and cold and nasty like today. And so usually it brightens my spirits, makes me feel better. But if I'm in a mood, then it may not. It may be hot and, you know, oh, this is just uncomfortable and miserable and I don't want to be out here, you know, that sort of thing. So how you feel about what's going on in your world can affect your perception of nature as well. And so it's still kind of, nature can heal, but also you can see nature differently depending on how you feel. So ultimately, to fully heal, you would have to change something within yourself, as well as let nature kind of works together in this like symbiotic sort of thing. So anyway, that's Emerson's nature. Anybody have questions or comments or discussion or anything? Does anything that he says make sense to you? Like, especially those of you that hunt, do you feel that way in the woods? Like, it just makes you at peace? Or not? Everybody asleep this morning?
I mean, I used to hunt, so I mean, I kind of felt that way.
Okay, so just kind of being kind of alone in solitude, it gave you that peaceful sort of feeling. And
yeah, and it overall, you know, made me happy while I was hunting too.
okay. So, I mean, there's something to it. And I do feel like this line that nature always wears the colors of the spirit. I do feel like what we see, what we allow ourselves to see has to do a lot with how we feel on the inside. And, you know, if we are like appreciative and happy, then we're going to see more. We're going to appreciate more of nature. Whereas if we're busy and stressed, we may not even recognize it. And, you know, that's where in my own life, I see that a lot of times, that I miss big nature moments that could be amazing because I don't see them the same way, because I'm not in an appreciative mood, I guess. We can't always be in appreciative moods. Okay, so let me find Thoreau. It's a little ways down. Maybe someday. And we aren't looking at the whole thing of Walden. Actually, we're even looking at a smaller section than what's there. All right, so Thoreau, he was very complex. Like, most people think, oh, he's the guy that went for 2 years and lived in the woods and wrote about it. And, you know, that sort of thing. But he was very opinionated. He was a nonconformist, so he's not going to go along with things because other people tell him to. So that's where he fits in very well with this individualism, transcendentalist movement. Unconventional thinker, and he was very vocal about his ideas on war, slavery, wealth, taxes, friendship, vegetarianism. I mean, like, anything he believed strongly, and he was going to be very vocal about. And he would write and teach about that, but he also would write and, you know, about things like working in the garden or, you know, walking in the woods. So, I mean, he's very, very complex. Like, he's very simple, but then at the same time, he has a lot of depth to him as well. And so what he observed, he wrote. And so he starts them as these sort of journal entries or like mini essay type things. And then eventually they evolve into this book and of all of it. Anyway, he was born in Concord, Massachusetts. He lived there almost all of his life. He also graduated from Harvard. And then he started teaching at the grammar school, or the school that you go to before you go to college. It's not necessarily like high school, because it was really kind of like all school combined. Kind of like those one-room schoolhouses you see where like they would have the rulers and you have to hold your hand out, smack your hand with the ruler or whatever. He did not agree with physical discipline. And so that didn't work so well for him. And he decided to create his own school with his brother. And it was very successful, except his brother's health started to fail, and so he couldn't do it by himself, and they wound up having to close it. So he taught at a school, then he started a school, and then he had to close the school. And then he just started like writing more. He was very influenced by Emerson, and they became friends while they were at Harvard. And then Emerson again lived with him as assisting as a handyman during this time. And that's when he decided he was going to take his 2-year hiatus. And he built a cabin on Emerson's land at Walden Pond. And he lived there for more than 2 years, just writing, reading, observing. That's it. And some people would say, wow, what a boring life. Anybody like totally be up for that right now? Like, give me 2 years in a cabin by myself? Do what? Not by yourself? I don't know if I could do 2 years. I could do like a week though. I know. I'm more of a people person. Like my husband, he could totally do it for 2 years. He does not have to have people. It does not bother him in the least. But after a while, I'm like, okay, I can't. Talking to myself is not working so well. Like when you start arguing with yourself, that's probably a bad thing. But you know, I don't know. Interesting concept. I always see those things on Facebook where it's like, if you get $1 million if you can live on this deserted island with no internet and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I probably could. But I'm like, but do I get to have people? Because I couldn't do it if I didn't have at least somebody else. All right, so let's look at Walden Pond. Yes. So here's Walden Pond. This is Thoreau's cabin site. Oh, it didn't go there. Oh, there we go. So here's your nice little picture of what Walden Pond would look like. Oh, so this is like where his cabin was. So it wasn't very big. We'll take the little guy and go explore. I think there are actually random people on this, but oh, no, not that far up. Sorry. Don't go up that far. Why does my little guy want to keep going up? I can't see where I am now. Okay, we'll have to move him again. I can't do that. Go slowly. There we go. All right, so this is your virtual field trip to Walden Pond, to Thoreau's cabin. So all these little ropes, obviously the cabin's not still there, but these are the foundations, or not foundations, but they're just, they're marking where the cabin was, because once it fell down, like, you know. Oh, good. This one does have some people. So you can see some people exploring Walden Pond, Thoreau cabin site. You can see the pond out there in the distance. So you can imagine as soon as he walks out his door right here, it's like, oh, look, nature, pond, wildlife, beautiful. So if we wanted to, let's see, can we go that way? Trees, yay. I know some of you are like, oh, okay. Oh man, this is not the one. Sometimes when you click on it, like there are random people, like this random person in just giant poncho was standing on one of these things, and then the next one, like she has her poncho covering her face. It's really kind of interesting. I thought I could like walk. Can I not go this way? Apparently there are no arrows at this one, so I guess not. But yeah, this is, you know, this is the sky. And obviously it's a little different than when Thoreau would have been there, I'm sure. But still, that's it. And then we'll go to a different spot in Walden Pond, and then that way you can actually see the pond part. We'll go to this little dot here. Apparently these are where people have taken pictures. Why did I not go? But apparently they even have a visitor center. I guess you can't go where the picture dot is. We'll go beside it. Nope. It totally let me yesterday. Oh, I can go into the middle of the pond apparently, or in the pond. So here's the pond. There's some people over there sunbathing beside the pond. I mean, it just looks like, I mean, somebody said it kind of looks like Craighead. I'm like, well, other than that, like, big bank there, yeah, it kind of does. Here's some, you know, here's the ground under the, or leading into the pond, I guess. Or maybe it's under the water, I can't really tell. There's some more sunbathers over there across. I don't know. See if we can zoom in on a fish. Oh, I don't see any fish. I know, right? But more people. More people. Sunbathers, kayakers. Putting sunscreen on, that's probably safe. What is that? What? Am I cracking you up? Sorry. I don't know what this is. Well, I mean, it is safe. I put sunscreen on. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I burned the first day and then I stay inside there.
Oh, see, no. I don't like that because I like to enjoy the whole trip. What?
That's a rock, honey.
Where? This?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it's a rock. I don't know.
No, that's the golden egg.
Anyway, so I don't know what the visitor center looks like, but apparently this is it. Oh, and this one you can go, but you can't move it around, so that's not as much fun. Okay, anyway. So they have their own visitor center. So it's that may be the visitor center. Like where? Down here?
Over. No, wrong way. I can't see what y'all are talking about. I'm lying. You can see it.
I can't go the other way. I can only go that way.
No, the picture.
Oh, oh yes, okay. Did they build a replica? Because yeah, well, I mean, it's probably what it would have been, but the other one is like where it actually was, I guess. But yeah, here's Thoreau. Here's his statue there. I wish I could like, oh, here we go. I can zoom in on this part, or I can move it. So there's Thoreau. Kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln in that statue. I don't know. And there's his cabin and his woodshed. And there's something telling all about him. Okay. Sorry, I can stop wasting time now. So that's basically what he did. And part of the reason that he decided to do this was his brother died in 1842, and it really saddened him, and he wrote some things about the trip they took camping and canoeing, and so and he wrote that while he was there. So he really started to reminisce about different times, and maybe that's what drove him to the woods. Maybe the death of his brother drove him there. It doesn't mention, I don't think, whether he was married or anything like that. I can't remember. Let's see if it tells us anything about him. Apparently he had older siblings, John and Helen, and younger sister Sophia. Oh, his father operated a pencil factory. Interesting. I know, right? What? Yeah. How dogs cry for help. But it never actually mentions anything. Oh, wait, here we go. Apparently he still still helped Emerson by, looking in on his house, and he visited the woods around Cape Cod, devoted abolitionist. And apparently he had tuberculosis. Imagine that. Like Poe. He had contracted it decades earlier. He went to Minnesota, but it didn't help. And he eventually, I guess he died of tuberculosis several years later. But it never mentions anything about a family. So it doesn't look like he ever, other than the one he was born into, it doesn't look like he ever got married, had kids, anything like that. So very private kind of person, I suppose. Okay, so we're actually not probably going to read this part because it's a little bit longer than the one that we have. So let me pull that document up. All right, and then you will have, and you can do this as you go if you want, or you can wait and do it afterward. I don't know how much time this won't take us real long, but you'll have a little bit of time after, and then you'll have some time on Monday. So you're going to take this, and basically he is arguing all of these things, even though it doesn't really sound like an argument, that he's making a claim and all that kind of stuff, so it is an argument. But the first paragraph, you're just going to sort of explain how these descriptions of his new home, how the language helps describe, like how does it help you see it better kind of thing. The second one, you're looking at the arguments that he is using. You're paraphrasing it, so putting it in your own words, supporting that argument with something that that could be more modern, and then meaningful commentary, and it even specifies like explain the evidence, discuss why it's important, and then how it shows the importance today. And then you do it 2 times. And then the last paragraph, you are looking at the topic sentence. How does he develop the argument about human nature? What evidence proves it? And then how does it prove, what evidence, and then how does it prove it? So you're looking at like more specific like evidence, like what does he say that helps to prove it here? How does he develop an argument about human nature here? And then how does this prove this in the third one? All right. When I first took up my abode in the woods, that is, began to spend my nights as well as days there, which by accident was on Independence Day, or the 4th of July, 1845, my house was not finished for winter, but was merely a defense against the rain, without plastering or chimney, the walls being of rough, weather-stained boards with wide chinks, which made it cool at night. The upright, white-hewn studs and freshly planed door and window casings gave it a clean and airy look, especially in the morning, when its timbers were saturated with dew, so that I fancied that by noon some sweet gum would exude from them. To my imagination, it retained throughout the day more or less of this auroral, which, if you look down at the footnotes, resembling the dawn, character, reminding me of a certain house on a mountain which I had visited a year before. This was an airy and unplastered cabin, fit to entertain a traveling god, and where a goddess might trail her garments. The winds which passed over my dwelling were as sweep over the ridges of mountains, bearing the broken strains or celestial parts only of terrestrial music. The morning wind forever blows. The poem of creation is uninterrupted, but few are the ears that hear it. Olympus is but outside of the earth everywhere, and so the home of the gods. So, you saw the size of his little cabin. It wasn't anything spectacular. And apparently that first, when he first moved out there, like, it wasn't even equipped for winter. Like, he was going to have to do some work on it before it got to winter. So it's not that bad that you have some cool air maybe coming in at night in the summer, but it would be a little tough in the winter. So anyway, he goes into these great descriptions of what it is. And that's how you can definitely tell he is a true observer. If observing means you actually observe every little tiny thing around you, then that was Thoreau. And so he's talking about how it's just the boards are weather stained. There's spaces in between them. The studs in the walls, the door, it had actually been planed off recently. So, that you kind of have that image in your head. And, then he's like, by noon, some sweet gum would basically exude from it because it was so saturated with dew, like the wood, it's not been finished. I mean, like, now you wouldn't want that to happen because it's going to ruin your door eventually if you kept getting moisture. But at that time, he was just amazed by the fact that, it was like that. And again, he was like, to my imagination, it retained throughout the day, more or less, like it stayed that way. Like it wasn't, this morning dawn, like it's almost like it continued that way all day long, probably because he's in the woods and there's not a lot of sunlight, but but he says it reminds him of a house on a mountain that was also airy and didn't have, insulation and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, and it was fit for a god or a goddess to be there. So, hey, so is mine, pretty much. Like he saw his little tiny cabin in the woods as fit for a god or a goddess. And then this paragraph has some of the arguments that he is looking at. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discovered that I had not lived. I do not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear, nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. And if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world. Or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and be able to give a true account of it on my next excursion. For most men, it appears to me, are in a strange uncertainty about it, whether it is of the devil or of God, and have somewhat hastily concluded that it is the chief end of man here to glorify God and enjoy him forever. So what is he trying to argue? He wished to live deliberately because he doesn't want to die and realize he never lived. So he's arguing that probably some people don't even realize that they are kind of not living when they're living. Like, he's like, I want to intentionally live, not live by accident, kind of thing. And he's talking about, like, he says, I wanted to live deep, suck out all the marrow of life, like just pull on everything that is there. And so he's kind of arguing that in order to do that, he has to seclude, he has to go off by himself. He says he wants to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. Like, I want to take life, I want to be in control of my life. So there's another sort of argument that he wants to control it, not let his life be controlled by other people. And he said, and if it's supposed to be bad, then I want the full extent of how bad it's going to be. And then I want to That way I can write about it and can really fully experience whatever it is it's supposed to be. And he says that some people don't even, they're uncertain about life, about whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's of the devil, of God, you know, like what really is the purpose kind of life. And so he's using some of these different arguments within this paragraph to do that. Still, we live meanly, like ants, though the fable tells us that we were long ago changed into men. Like pygmies, we fight with cranes. It is error upon error and clout upon clout, and our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous and inevitable wretchedness. Our life is frittered away by detail. An honest man has hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases he may add his 10 toes, and lump the rest. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. I say, let your affairs be as 2 or 3, and not 100 or 1,000. Instead of 1,000,000, count half a dozen, and keep your accounts on your thumbnail. In the midst of this chopping sea of civilized life, such are the clouds and storms and quicksands of 1,001 items to be allowed for, that a man has to live if he would not founder and go to the bottom and not make his port at all by dead reckoning, and he must be a great calculator indeed who succeeds. Simplify, simplify. So he is basically kind of lashing out at society and the world for their materialism, for focusing so much on money, for, you know, trying to make more, when he's saying simplicity. You don't have to have more. You just have to have enough, kind of thing. And so he says our life is frittered away by detail. And a lot of times I see that, you know, we're so concerned with the details. We're so concerned with the little stuff that in the grand scheme of things, does it matter? Probably not. I mean, does it, you know, if you can do this, but it's going to stress you out, should you? Should you push yourself and your money to try this, and, you know, work 80 hours a week in order to try to satisfy frivolous needs? Or do you scale it back and do what you have to in order to meet what you need? And so you've got some arguments, but I think a lot of this part, especially, a lot of people have realized this over the last few months, that sometimes what you thought you needed may not necessarily be what you need. Maybe you do need to simplify. Maybe you need to quit worrying about the frivolous things. Maybe, you know, quit counting 100,000 or 100 or 1,000. Maybe reduce it down, half a dozen. You know, you don't have to have this many things. I mean, maybe you just need this much, kind of this. And, you know, and that's what he just keeps repeating, this idea of simplicity and to simplify. And so that's one of the things that really strikes me is I make things harder for myself than they have to be sometimes. And so, you know, however you simplify, try to figure out, can you do that? Can you make something simpler for yourself and still have the same, like, have your needs met, have everything that you want? Does it make it even better? Because sometimes if you take out all the extra that stresses you out, it actually might be kind of nice on occasion. Okay, so again, you're working with this, and so it probably would be helpful to split your screen and kind of put the passage on one side. Maybe if I can get it to work. Whoops, that didn't work. And put the document that you're answering on the other side. You may have to, let me zoom back out a little bit. You may have to kind of scoot things over so you can see both at the same time. Still have to go down a little bit. And so the first paragraph all you're working with is the descriptions that he was talking about, his language. So, for example, on this first quotation, my house was not finished for winter, but was merely a defense against the rain, without plastering or chimney. So what does that tell us about his new home? What do we know about it?
That his new home is like damaged and he can't really do nothing about it, so he's gonna have to fix it to where it makes him happy and at home.
Okay. So, I mean, I don't know that it was damaged. It just wasn't like, it wasn't structurally like sound for winter, I guess. So we know it needs some repairs. The fact that he says, you know, it was a defense against the rain. And again, that's the way they spelled stuff back then, not the way we spell it now. But he doesn't seem to be upset about it. Like, he's just like, yeah, it is what it is, kind of thing. And then, you know, how the white hewn studs, so, you know, like the wood holding up the walls and things like that, the freshly planed door, so sanded down, you know, real straight, like he's taking an appreciation for the simplicity. And again, once you get to the end of this, you're like, oh yeah, makes sense. He's okay with simplicity. So he's totally fine with studs in a door. Like, he doesn't have to have anything else. And he considers it clean and airy as opposed to stark and bare, which is what most of us would probably consider it now. So that's what you're doing on those first four. So just take and just tell us what those mean and sort of how what he says develops that description. So how does it describe it? How does it show you what he feels about it? That sort of thing. And then this part, it says paraphrase one of his arguments. And so you're looking at the second paragraph. And so one argument that you could say is that he feels some people die without truly ever truly living, and that he doesn't want to be that way. And so evidence from my own knowledge, so this would be something that I can connect to it. Actually, I wouldn't say he felt, we would just say some people, because we're looking at the argument, not his perspective, I guess. Something like that. Still, people waste their life worrying about frivolous things that don't make a difference. And then 3 sentences of meaningful commentary. So sentence 1 is explain the evidence. So you're going to use evidence from over here. So he says, what is it? So that was one of his phrases that he used, was I wanted to live deep and suck out all, oh, I skipped the word, all the marrow of life. And so if you discuss the importance of that, so why would this be important? Like, why does this matter that you and the marrow of life is basically like all of the enjoyment, all of the experiences, things like that. So, uh-oh, I did something weird. Okay. Oh goodness, I can't type today. What is the deal on my keyboard? So he wanted to experience the joys, the sadnesses even. He wanted to feel all of life, whatever life threw at him. He wanted to write about it. He wanted the world to see and learn by his examples. And then how does that apply today? Anybody? I don't really know. I'm just making stuff up. I mean, most of us probably want to avoid the bad, even though that is a part of life. The bad parts are also part of our life, whether we like it or not. And usually that's what we learn from, more so even than the good. And so that's just kind of one example. So I think I've kind of gone really far away from the argument. I might have actually combined two arguments somehow. It's kind of the same thing. It gets there eventually. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to be in the second paragraph. If you need to go into the third paragraph for another argument, you can, because he does eventually in that third paragraph talks about simplifying and things like that. So if you need to pull in from that one, you can, if you can't find another argument in this second paragraph. And I'll pull that one back up here in just a minute if you need to see it. And then the third paragraph is just looking at the topic sentence. And so that's basically this first one. Still we live meanly like ants, though the fable tells us that we were long ago changed into men. Like pygmies, we fight with cranes. It is error upon error and clout upon clout, and our best virtue has for its occasion a superfluous and inevitable wretchedness. So first of all, you know, you have to know what all that means. So it's got some allusions, you know, a fable about ants changed to men. So look that one up. This is another Greek mythology reference. He uses a lot of Greek mythology references in this, so allusions to that. So put it into the solitude, he turned the ants on the island into men. So he's saying that we're living like the ants, when really we shouldn't be. We should be taking control of our own life. We should be doing our own things. And then the pygmies, I'm trying to remember what that one's from. The pygmies were also, in Greek mythology. What in the world? They were involved in a constant war with the cranes, which migrated in the winter to their homeland. And so they're a type of like bird type thing, I guess. Or no, that's the pygmy. The bird, the crane is the bird. So anyway, he's saying we fight with things all the time when really, why? This one's a little more hard. Sorry. I thought this was going to be easier than it was. Okay, so topic sentence, he develops an argument about human nature by saying, sometimes we make things too complicated. We don't live as we should. And so evidence talks about our life is frittered away by detail, basically. And then just that simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Like those are the things that we're saying, like sometimes we don't have to make it so difficult. We need to simplify. And so how does the evidence prove your topic sentence? Then I don't know. All right. So I'm going to actually open this again, and I'll put that middle section on one side and the sorry, hang on. Trying to make it where you can see both at once. All right, so here's that first part with the argument, and then, so that's the first example, and then come up with a second, and then paragraph 3. Sorry, this was not the thing that I thought I had for this. I apparently posted the wrong one. But it's okay.
So on the third one, we have to come up with another one?
No, the third one, that's all it is, the paragraph 3. The one for paragraph 2 is the one where you come up with a second argument and then do the same thing as that.
Okay.
So that's what you're working on for the rest of the time. Again, you've got like 9 minutes, so try to at least get the examples that we have here. And then you don't have too much more of that to actually fill out, just a few things for the descriptions on that first paragraph, or from the first paragraph, and then one more argument from somewhere. It doesn't even have to come from the second paragraph, but just one other argument and how you're supporting it with evidence and all that kind of stuff. Because that's the kind of skills you're going to have in order to write argumentative papers and research papers and things like that.
I'm confused on question 4.
Oh,
On the very first passage. like I know it's talking about like over the hills and stuff, and like how it's hard for him to go over it.
Well, it's saying that the winds which passed over my dwelling were such as sweep over the ridges of mountains. Like it's almost like as it passes over his house, it's just like as it goes through the mountains, like it has that same sound, it has that same like pattern, like he can hear the wind as it goes through. Kind of gives you some sound imagery there. It's almost like his house is like he's comparing his house to the mountain. Like as it goes over the house, it's like just like it's going over the mountaintops, the ridges of the mountains. Mhm. On my cup, that's me. That's my oldest. That's my Ellis when he was a baby. That was like almost 7 years ago now. Do what? A Dale Earnhardt cup? I don't know. I was like, what is this sound? And I realized I clicked the notification on my thing. Cold rain with a few snowflakes. Sorry. It's like it's right there. And then it's like, nope, sorry. Nope, sorry. We're going to keep pushing it the other way. Man. I mean, look at that. Like there's blue all the way around except like right where we are. Isn't that lovely? I wish. It's not going to do enough to get us out. It's just going to do enough to make it nasty if it does anything. I had to tell Ellis I didn't think his pajamas inside out were going to cut it today. He was quite disappointed. Oh, wait, y'all can't see both screens, can you? I just realized the people in here can, but the people online can't because I'm only sharing one screen. How do I fix that, I wonder? I probably don't. Here, I'll move it down to the third one for a while and then I'll move it back up. I'll switch it and move that one up for y'all.
What does it mean by what does it mean by airy and unplastic? What does that mean?
On the first.
Yeah, no, it's just like I'm just thinking of what it
Oh,
is.
okay. Airy is just kind of like open and like lots of space and maybe even like air coming through in this case. And unplastered means like it's not like the holes aren't plastered in, like so the air's coming through. It's you know, it's not shut in, like he still feels like it's open and has some more space basically.
Okay.
All right. So see y'all on Monday.